The government is still in shutdown, which is absolutely insane. There are about 800,000 workers who are not being paid currently. And so what that means is there are people, I think it was something like a vast majority of the country lives paycheck to paycheck. And so when you have a job and you're working your labor and then you're not getting paid anything, you have bills to pay. You can't just like back it up, as in like, when they, I think that that Congress recently passed a bill that would give them back pay. Some of them back pay, but it doesn't matter because they need the money now. They are living paycheck to paycheck because of the crazy society that we have, and you can't just skip paychecks like that. That's not how bills work. That's not how things work. So what we're going to be looking at here, Senator from Colorado, Michael Bennet. Now, when I saw Michael Bennet trending on Twitter, I thought it was going to be about the football player. Turned out to be a senator from Colorado who absolutely mauls Ted Cruz, who is the perpetrator of a horrific government shutdown in 2013 that made no sense because they wanted to defund parts of Obamacare, which was already law, which is what's a big distinction between that shutdown and this one. The border wall hasn't been passed, and it was not like a law that mandates the spending for it. In 2013, it was a law that was passed, and they're still trying to defund parts of it, despite it already being law. So the government shutdowns are totally different. But anyways, he is going to go after Ted Cruz, man, and it's a really fiery speech. I'm only going to show you guys part of this because the clip, I think, is like 23 minutes long. You check it out, the rest of it out on, I think, C-SPAN. But check out this clip.
The only thing that is necessary to pass a clean bill paying the salaries of every man and woman in the Coast Guard is for the Democratic senators to withdraw their objection. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Madam President.
Senator from Colorado.
Madam President, I seldom, as you know, rise on this floor to contradict somebody on the other side. I've worked very hard over the years to work in a bipartisan way with the presiding officer, with my Republican colleagues, but these crocodile tears that the senator from Texas is crying for first responders are too hard for me to take. They're too hard for me to take. Because when the senator from Texas shut this government down in 2013, my state was flooded. It was underwater. People were killed. People's houses were destroyed. Their small businesses were ruined forever. And because of the senator from Texas, this government was shut down for politics. Then he surfed to a second place finish in the Iowa caucuses. But we're of no help to the first responders, to the teachers, to the students whose schools were closed, with a federal government that was shut down because of the junior senator from Texas. Now, it's his business, not my business, why he supports a president who wants to erect a medieval barrier on the border of Texas, who wants to use eminent domain to build that wall, who wants to declare an unconstitutional emergency to build that wall. That's the business of the senator from Texas. I can assure you that in Colorado, if a president said he was going to use eminent domain to erect a barrier across the state of Colorado, across the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, he was going to steal the property of our farmers and ranchers to build his medieval wall, there wouldn't be an elected leader from our state that would support that idea. Which goes to my final point, how ludicrous it is that this government is shut down over a promise the President of the United States couldn't keep. And that America is not interested in having him keep. This idea that he was going to build a medieval wall across the southern border of Texas, take it from the farmers and ranchers that were there, and have the Mexicans pay for it isn't true. That's why we're here. Because he's now saying the taxpayers have to pay for it. That's not what he said during his campaign. Over and over and over and over again, he said Mexico would pay for the wall. Over and over again. That was that. I was going to talk about what he said about the junior senator's father, but I'm going to let that alone. It was after that. And now we're here with the government shutdown over his broken promise while the Chinese are landing spacecraft on the dark side of the moon. That's what they're doing. Not to mention what they're doing in Latin America and with their One Belt, One Road initiative in Asia. That's what they're doing while we're shut down over a promise he never thought he would never keep and didn't keep. And finally, this idea that, I'm sorry to say, my colleague from Texas, and I respect him, and he's obviously a very intelligent person, but this idea that Democrats are for open borders is gibberish. And it is proven by what the senator from Louisiana said, which is that time after time, we have supported real border security. Not a wall that the Mexico pays for, that gets you attentions at campaign rallies from some people in America, and it gets talked about on, Fox News at night. In 2013, Senator from Texas didn't support it. I did. In 2013, we passed a bill here in a bipartisan way. It got 68 votes. It had $46 billion in border security in it. 46! Not $5 billion for his rinky-dink wall he's talking about building. $46 billion of border security. It had, to be precise about it, 350 miles of what the president now refers to as steel slats. By the way, America, do you hear him not calling it a wall anymore? Now it's steel slats. Now it's a border barrier. 350 miles of so-called steel slats was in that bill. You know what else was in that bill? I think, Madam President, I believe you voted for that bill. I'll tell you what else was in that bill. We doubled the number of border security agents on that border. They could practically hold hands on the border. There were so many border security agents in that bill. We had billions of dollars of drone technology so that we could learn from what we've learned in Afghanistan and other places and see every single inch of that border. Every inch. We had internal security in that bill so that small businesses and farmers and ranchers don't have to be the immigration police. So that finally in America, we can actually know who came here legally on a visa but overstayed their visa, because 40% of the people in this country that are undocumented are here who came legally and overstayed. We still can't do that in America because that bill passed the Senate, but it couldn't get a vote in the House because of the stupidest rule ever created called the Hastert Rule, named after somebody who's in prison. That has allowed a minority of tyrants in the Congress to bring a Democratic president low, President Obama, who they didn't let do anything, and to ruin the speakership of John Boehner, and to allow Paul Ryan to almost accomplish nothing while he was Speaker except leaving this place in a government shutdown.
Yeah, man, that was an absolute drop down kick on Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz is a really shitty person. And I think it's just common knowledge that basically no one, even in the Senate, likes him, even in the Republican Party. I think I recall reading a John McCain quote where he was basically crapping on him because it was part of the government shutdown where he was talking about how there were people in the state of Arizona who were unable to get, their welfare and their benefits who, rely on it, and they were going after Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz was the one perpetrating it. The Freedom Caucus and these radical, absolutely radical Republicans, that's what they are. Let's keep it real. Radical Republicans who were trying to defund parts of a law, and they were shutting it down over that when Obamacare was passed as law and set to go in. And so when you compare these two shutdowns, they're clear where the blame should go because and as he's pointed out there, like, they've given money, and this plays into the point of, and it's a point that Jimmy Dore has made, which is that this is just a stunt by Trump because what he's trying to do is he's trying to have this as like a ploy for his fan base and his super uber fan base, and he's trying to embrace them when they had a majority in both houses and they did not decide to actually, pass a bill to build a wall. So what you're looking at here is just, it's a political trick, it's a political ploy, it's a political game is being played, it's a political trick, it's a gimmick, and it's just a joke, and even this guy Michael Bennet apparently he's a mellow bipartisan dude, which usually means he's more of like towards the center, but he talks about how Ted Cruz is trying to, he's having what he's called crocodile tears, basically insincere tears, because he's trying to talk about and sort of guilt in a way what's going on. The guilt the Democrats and saying, there are people who are unable to pay, their bills and they're not being funded and they're not being paid right now. And then he goes in on him because he's basically, Ted Cruz is super ironic, by the way. Remember, he was on Obamacare at one point when he shut down the government because of Obamacare. And so he goes in on him because when Ted Cruz did that, that was what the same thing was going on. It was like you're shutting down the government for a dumb political stunt, and it results in people, not being able to get their benefits, people not getting paid, people who are working. Guys, there are employee food lines now. I saw a picture on Twitter of there being a line of people who work in DC who have government jobs, and they're in a line getting food. People talk about bread lines and socialism, but it's pretty insane to see, a bread line for workers. These people are workers. They're not even just people who are just getting benefits. Like, these people actually work. They do work. And what's up with Ted Cruz's beard, by the way? Kind of his, I don't know, like a movie of some sort, I don't know, character or something like that. But Ted Cruz is really a slimy D-bag. It does suck that he, Beto O'Rourke was not someone who was an ideal progressive, especially after actually looking into his record. I think some of us, including myself, got caught in the hype, but it would have been a hell of a lot better than having Ted Cruz as Senator of Texas. And who does this blame go on? This blame directly goes on Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump, because the House of Representatives has voted, I believe, 9 times, maybe even more at this point, to fund the government. And I believe still at this point, I don't know if the Senate has voted yet, or if I think they might vote sooner. They might have voted on a couple of them, but basically they won't vote on anything because McConnell just keeps blocking it. And so AOC was trying to find Mitch and everything. It's disgusting. This solely falls on Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump because they have voted to fund the government and they continue to block it. They're holding the government hostage, and they're holding the paychecks of almost 1 million workers hostage because he wants to have the government spend money to basically fund his next election. That's basically what it is. And by the way, why doesn't anyone ask Trump about how he said Mexico was going to pay for it and now they haven't paid anything? Like, I like how we just, that's the thing about Trump presidency, is so many things like that just go under the not under the radar. We just kind of stop. We stop talking about it. But dog, you said Mexico was gonna pay for it. What happened? They're obviously not gonna. Obviously, anybody with 2 brain cells knew that they weren't gonna pay for it. But it's your campaign promise. So, anyways, the point here being is, stop holding the paychecks of almost 1 million workers hostage to pay for your dumbass wall. That's not gonna do anything. It's not gonna do shit. And reopen the government immediately.